The Heron and the Fish. One day, a heron was out fishing in his favourite stretch of river. He stood there still as a statue, his long, sharp bill ready to stab at tasty fish. All around his legs the fish swarmed, not even noticing him. The heron waited and waited. "These fish aren't big enough for me," he said. "I'll wait until a big one comes along." So he waited and waited, and still there were plenty of fish, but always too small. "I don't want a snack. I want a proper meal," thought the heron. So he waited even longer. Suddenly all the fish left the shallows and moved away, out into the deep water in the middle of the river. Now there were no fish for the heron to catch, not even small ones. "Oh, drat!" he said to himself. "I shouldn't have waited so long." And all he had for his breakfast was snail. A tiny green snail. The oak tree and the river reeds. There once stood a giant oak tree, its great branches shading the silver river beneath it. Along the river's edge was a bank of reeds. Whenever the wind blew, the reeds hung their heads and sang a sad song. The giant oak tree felt sorry for them. "I am so lucky," he said. "When the wind blows, I just rustle my leaves and sing a happy tune. I know no storm could ever bend me as it bends you." Just then, the reeds began to tremble. A storm was coming in from the north. By nightfall, the storm had become a raging hurricane. The great oak was not afraid. He stood strong against it. Below, the reeds were bent almost to the ground. Soon the ground was soaked with rain, and the roots of the great oak tree began to loosen. His leaves became wet and heavy. Still, he did not bend. Then there was one mighty gust of wind. Up came the roots, and over went the great oak tree, crashing down into the river. When the storm had passed, the reeds were still there, singing their sad song. A lament for the great oak tree, who lay like a fallen warrior, his battle lost. So, a double door today. I hope you enjoyed this 2-story special. I thought that these 2 fables were a little bit too short to have their own episodes, so decided it might be best to stick them together. Put your thinking caps on and share with me what you think the morals behind those 2 stories could be. The heron and the fish, and the oak tree and the river reeds. Thank you for the fantastic feedback on yesterday's iconic fable, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, sometimes known as The Wolf and the Shepherd's Son. It really does leave an impact, doesn't it? As Kirsten said, I don't like the stories with sad endings, but you're right. My grandma told me this one at the age of 6 or 7, and I was terrified of lying after that. My fiancée, Maria, she said exactly the same thing. She recalls coming across the story at about the same age, maybe 5 or 6, and has probably never told a lie since. So perhaps the major take-home message was summed up very well by a bunch of you. Ada, when you are known as a liar, no one will believe you, even when you are telling the truth. I liked Ms. Leanite's angle on it. Pretty gruesome. I'd have pulled the kid off guard duty after the first false alarm and put someone more reliable in his place. Humph. Fair point, Ms. Leanite, fair point. In a similar vein, Svetlana reflected, I feel sorry for the boy. It was obvious that he wasn't ready to be a shepherd. He didn't take his responsibilities seriously and played tricks instead of doing his duty. Maybe he just needed some training or to grow up a little bit. His father, though, paid a big price for not seeing that. He not only lost most of his sheep, but a son too. And again, it's really interesting for me to read your reflections. Some of you consistently look at the story from angles that I'd not really thought of myself. So in this case, was it just the boy that was to blame? I mean, he was still a child after all, it seems. Perhaps the father had also been irresponsible. Lessons learned on both sides there. And as Sandra put it, lying will always catch up with you and bite you in the butt. Indeed. A solid fable, that one. Famous for a reason. Really ingrains itself in your mind. Thank you so much for being here. Do come back tomorrow and see what's hiding behind door 15. You take care, Fox fans. Read to you soon.